Okay, so now let us proceed to our next topic, which is the phylum Platyhelminthes. Okay, so our previous topic, we have discussed Nemathelminthes or your nematodes. So now for your Platyhelminthes, from the term platy means flat. Helminthes, still there are parasitic worms. Okay, so this phylum, under this phylum, we have your class Cestoda and your class Trematoda. For the class Cestoda, they are otherwise known as your tapeworms, no? So for your Trematoda or your trematodes, they are your flukes. Okay, so we will first discuss your cestodes. Okay. Okay, so let us start with the cestodes by discussing their general characteristics. Okay. Okay, so for your cestodes, they are flattened dorsoventrally. So both sides are flat. So they are ribbon-like or tape-like. Hence, they are also called as tapeworms. So based on the picture, they are segmented, no? Different from your nematodes, which are round in appearance or non-segmented, and they have no circulatory system and alimentary canal. So for them to survive inside the host, nutrients are absorbed via their outer covering, which is called as tegument. Okay, so for your nematodes, it is known as the cuticle. So the counterpart for the cestodes, it is the tegument. Okay, so cestodes are also known to be hermaphroditic. So they both acquire male and female reproductive organs. Okay, so still excretory and nervous systems are present. Okay, so let's discuss the different parts of a typical cestodes. Okay, so first, always remember that that your cestodes, morphologically, it is divided into three parts: the scolex or the head, no, and the neck, and the segments or known as the proglottids. Okay, so for the scolex, guys, it is the organ of attachment to the intestinal mucosa of of the definitive host. Okay, and for the neck, immediately it is located behind the head, and it is the region of growth from where the new proglottids are being formed. Okay, so in short, it is the region of growth for of the proglottids, ng tapeworms. Okay, and after the neck, we have the different types of segments or proglottids. So first, it will start from an immature proglottid, and then it will later mature, and lastly at the tip, no, or down to the posterior part of the cestodes, we have your ripe or gravid proglottids. So what are the difference between these three types of segments? Okay, so for the immature, they are the new segments. So they in this particular proglottid, reproductive organs are not well developed. So as it mature, no, a mature proglottid, which is a more distal to the neck, so it has a well-developed organs or complete functional set of male or female reproductive organs. But take note that in mature proglottid, there are still no eggs present. Okay, so down to the gravid, it is the most distal, and take note that this particular proglottid is where uterus is filled with eggs. Okay, so definitely this particular proglottid is the one that lays eggs or releases eggs. Okay, so um your proglottids, guys, your proglottids, it may vary from the, different um, cestodes, no? So, like for example, we have your Echinococcus granulosus, wherein it has only three proglottids, no? And while we have also another cestode that may reach up to 4,000 proglottids present. Okay? So, by the way, proglottids, guys, collectively, they are known as your strobila. Okay? So, here, we have here your strobila, down to, right after the neck, down to the tip of the posterior tail. Okay? So, um, just take note, guys, that in understanding cestodes, the non-recovery of the scolex, no, it means that a particular individual um, may under or it result to to unsuccessful treatment. So it means nga kung wala mo na-recover ang scolex sa isa ka-infected nga patient, so definitely, it is useless. Useless ang aton nga treatment because the scolex, no, we all know that the scolex, it is where the neck is found. So definitely, it will still grow or it will still form new proglottids and it may continue its infection. Okay? So, this one, as you can see, um, this is the head, no, or the scolex. So here, we can see here four suckers, or this is known as the acetabula, no? Acetabula or acetabulum, no? Singular. So we have four suckers here. It is the one that attach, no, the host. Okay, so we have also here presence of what we called a protruded structure, which is known as your rostellum. And this particular rostellum may be armed or presence of hooklets, or maybe unarmed, no, or absence of hooklets here. So, duwa lang man na siya, armed or unarmed rostellum. Okay? So, um, in Cyclophilidaean nga cestodes, the scolex bear four cup-like muscular suckers or acetabula. Okay, so this is an example of Cyclophilidaean cestodes. Okay, later on we will discuss what are those Cyclophilidaean cestodes and what is that particular pseudo-Philidaean nga mga cestodes. Okay? So there are some species under Cyclophilidaean like your Taenia solium and your Hymenolepis nana, wherein the scolex has this rostellum. Okay, so not all Cyclophilidaean, guys, has rostellum, no, but they have all um, suckers, no, or acetabulum. Okay, so again, this is an example of armed rostellum, no, with hooks, and later on we will see as well an unarmed cestode. Okay, so here, try to look here, right at the very distal portion of the cestode or of the strobila. As you can see here, there is already a well-developed male and female reproductive organ, and they meet in a single cavity, no, wherein the genital pore is situated. Okay, so this is an example of a gravid, no, gravid nga proglottid. Okay. So another picture, no, a much clearer picture. So we have the testis here, testis. We have the ovary. We have this is the uterus rather. We have here the ovary, and we have the vas deferens, no, and the vagina meeting at the genital pore. Okay? So let's proceed to the order of cestodes. So as what I have mentioned earlier, that we have your cyclophilidean and we have pseudophilidean. Okay, this pseudophilidean, it is known as the false tapeworm. Okay, later on we will determine or we will know nga aging tawag siya false tapeworm. So example of your pseudophilidean is your Diphyllobotrium latum. Okay, best example. And for the cyclophilidean, there are true tapeworms. So majority of your cestodes are considered as cyclophilidean cestodes. Okay? So let's proceed with the point of or the difference, no? Between the pseudo and the cyclophilidean. Okay? So your pseudophilidean, guys, or your false tapeworm, examples are D. latum and we have your Spirometra species. While for your cyclophilidean or true tapeworm, they have your Taenia species, your Solium, your Saginata, your Asiatica. Okay, later on we will discuss it one by one. We have your Echinococcus, your Dipylidium, and we have your Hymenolapis. Okay, so the difference of pseudo and cyclo, based on their scolex. So, kagina, ang picture to naging present ko sa inyo, it is an example of cyclophilidean wherein there is presence of four cup-like suckers, no, or your acetabulum. Okay? And it can be associated with or without rostellum, no, or armed or unarmed rostellum. Okay? While the pseudophilidea, um, they are or they have spoon-shaped or spatulate like structure with slit-like sucking grooves or known as the bothria. Okay? So guys, um wala siya acetabulum or four cup-like suckers. Iya ya slit-like sucking grooves. Okay? And it is not associated with hooklets. Okay, that's why gina-consider siya as pseudophilidean because since majority of the cestodes are cyclophilidean, ari na nasalaan ni siya sang true tapeworm. But later on, it was identified that its collex is far different from the cyclophilidean. Okay? And also, for the segment or the strobila, we have this what we called anapolytic. When we say anapolytic, those segments or those proglatids are not able to be attached or to be detached from the strobila. That is what we call anapolytic. While apolytic naman, it is capable of shedding its proglatids. So, um, to differentiate the two, ang pinaka-complicated di kag pinaka infective di is the apolytic one because since kaya ya guys i-detach iya segments and kabalo kita that gravid segments no once ma-detach na siya pwede na siya guys nga um, spread sang eggs siya guys. So pwede motile na siya. There are cestodes nga motile ang iya nga proglatids. So um, your uterine pore naman or the genital pore no centrally located kung sa pseudophilidean while sa cyclophilidean side. So kagi nato sa picture side to siya so it is a cyclophilidean. Okay? While for the eggs, for the pseudophilidean, it is operculated. Later on, may picture ko what do we call operculated. Okay? So immature, usually it is laid the egg being laid is usually immature. For the cyclophilidean, they are nanoperculated, mature, when laid. So, usually may ara na siya guys, embryo inside of it. Okay? So, that is what we call the hexacant embryo. Okay? So, okay guys, so the operculum, no, the operculum, it acts as a passageway for the larvae. Okay? So, for the pseudophilidean, operculated siya. So, later on, kung mag-mature na, no, mag-embryonate na siya, da guys magwa ang larvae. Okay? So, um, what um, what is meant for hexacant embryo? It is spherical, no, and has 3 pairs of hooklets. So, gamay na siya, do bilog na siya, guys. Sa sulod, later on, may picture ko, and then may presence na siya of 3 pairs of hooklets. So, all in all, we have 6 hooklets present. Okay? So, for the larval stages, for the pseudophilidean, it has only 3 stages of, or it has 3 larval stages. We have the primary or the choroecidium, followed by the procercoid, and we have the plerocercoid. For the cyclophilidean, we have different, no, nga larvae, no, in on each type of cyclophilidean. Okay? So, like for example, for Taenia species, we have the cysticercus na ginatawag. That is what we call the larvae of your Taenia. Cysticercus. Cysticercoid naman, associated na siya for Hymenopeltis and Dipylidium. And for the hydatid cyst, it is unique to your Echinococcus. Okay? So for the intermediate host, pseudophilidean, usually it requires nila guys 2 intermediate hosts. Ang first intermediate host, marine crustacean. Second intermediate host, freshwater fish. For the cyclophilidean, it varies. So it only requires 1 intermediate host. So for Taenia saginata, example, cattle, no, or cows. So kabalo na kita kung anong mode of transmission niya, no? Siyempre, makita na siya sa beef or ma-acquire na siya naton by eating raw beef. T-solium naman sa mga pigs, no? Domestic pigs. For invertebrates, okay, we can have also invertebrates, and we have we have this another species of cyclophilidean wherein it may or may not require intermediate host. So kaya ya mag-direct direct type of life cycle, may araman guys indirect type of life cycle wherein hindi yan na kinanglan pa intermediate host, or may possibility or pwede man siya guys ka-require intermediate host. It's your Hymenopeltis nana. Okay? So for the mode of transmission, usually they go with ingestion. Okay? So let's start with intestinal cestodes. Okay? So, we have first the Diphyllobothrium latum. Guys, intestinal cestodes, ibig sabihin, the organ of establishment of its adult stage is usually in the small intestine. Okay? So, Diphyllobothrium latum, or otherwise known as the fish tapeworm or broad tapeworm, it is the one that is associated with your slit-like sucking grooves. So, try to look sa picture. It has 2 slit-like sucking grooves. So, usually, both sides na siya, guys, dorsal and ventral. And here it is, picture showing you the head or the scolex, its neck, and its immature down to its gravid, no, nga proglottids. Okay? And take note that this particular cestode is the largest tapeworm of man or infecting humans. And at the same time, it is known as the longest tapeworm. Nga aging consider siya guys largest tapeworm because as you can see, its proglottids guys are broader than or the width is much um broader ang width ya compared sa iya nga length, no, nga shorter lang. Okay? So, among all Diphyllobothrium species, it is just only one pathogenic nga species, which is the Diphyllobothrium latum. So let's start with its adult morphology. So its adult, its length spans up to 10 meters, so no longest, and it may have 4,000 proglutids. So no wonder guys, din consider siya nga longest because of its number sang iyang nga segments. Okay? So the neck of this particular or the adult stage of this dilatum, its neck is long, attenuated, and is followed by immature proglutids, no? So follow nyo lang ang morphology, and usually ang neck ya guys is unsegmented man gina kung neck, ang neck unsegmented gina siya guys, and take note, longer than its head ang iya nga neck. Okay? So, though long neck ang iyang appearance. Okay? The terminal, um, the terminal 4 to 5th of the worm is composed of mature and gravid proglutids. Okay? So, its collex, it is spatulate, spoon-shaped, or almond-shaped with two botria. Take note ha, bothria ang tawag naton sa iyang sucking grooves located dorsally and ventrally. Now, let's proceed with its proglutids. Okay? So, its mature segment, it is broader than its length, which is mas short siya, no? Ang iyang measurement. So, um, here we have here a picture. This is an example of the mature segment, no? So try to observe its width and its length. No, its length is much shorter compared to its width, which is broader. Okay, so this can be stained with carmine stain, and the female organ or the female reproductive organ, it has a bilobe, ovary, coiled, and rosette uterus. Okay, so bilobed ovary, so here. Okay, so um, both sides, later on may picture ko sang iya nga ovary. Try to observe its uterus. No, its uterus, guys. It's just like a petal of flower of rose. No, so that's why gitawag siya rosette uterus or rosette-like structure. So it is its genital pore is located mid-ventrally. Okay, so here, ara siya sa center. So um some of its terminal, take note ha, some of its terminal gravid segments become shrunken and empty due to constant discharge of eggs. Okay? So anapolitic siya guys. Pero, syempre, sa iya gravid nga portion nga proglutid, so naga-squeeze na siya guys um, by releasing its eggs, no? So, um, so sa tamaan niya nag-is ka-squeeze, di ba, anapolitic siya, but there are some instances nga sa tamaan niya nga squeeze ng iya gravid proglutids, it may end up or it may detach from its strobila, and it will be passed in the feces. So this is what we call your pseudo-apolysis, no? Pseudo-apolysis. So wala siya guys yang kusa nga naga-detach, which is an apolytic nga type. Ariya pseudo-apolysis lang, na-detach lang siya tungod sa um, um, sa sige, no, nga pag empty or constant discharge sang eggs sang aton nga pseudophilidaean. So for its egg, okay? So eggs are operculated So try to observe, guys. This is an example of your operculum. Okay? So here, this is the operculum, and at one end, no, it bears a small knob, which is known as the ab operculum. So it is the opposite side, no, sang aton nga operculum. It's ab operculum. Okay, so the characteristic of the egg or the ova of dilatum, it is the yellowish brown with a moderately thick shell and an inconspicuous operculum. Nga inconspicuous siya, no? Try to check. Okay, hindi balanon guys nga may operculum siya. Okay, so hindi visible. Okay? So that's for the ova of dilatum, and take note that this particular egg may resemble the egg of Paragonimus westermani, which is an example of trematodes. So, kung maka-trematodes na ta, na may different, i-check nyo ang difference ng duwa or ang similarities ng duwa kung parehas manggid. Okay? So let's proceed with the life cycle of dilatum. So there are uh, take note that the larval stage, it has three, no? Coracidium, procercoid, and plerocercoid. Okay? So, let's start with unembryonated eggs passed out in feces. Di ba take note? Operculated siya and then immature when laid. So, that is the diagnostic stage. No? Diagnostic stage na siya if an individual or a human is infected with dilatum. So, may makita ta nga egg, no? Or sometimes may makita ta guys nga proglutid, no? Or the in a pseudoapolytic way sa iya nga feces. No? After na siya guys nga may egg sa iya nga feces, it will be embryonate or it will embryonate in fresh water, and it will complete its development sa water, forming the coracidium. Okay? So, this is a free-swimming coracidium, no? Kita mo ni guys ang iyang may mga hair-like nga mga projections siya that helps or that aids in the motility of the coracidium. Okay? And then once siya sa water, the coracidium will be eaten by copepods, no? Copepods or marine crustaceans as the primary or the first intermediate host. No, example guys, we have your cyclops. Okay, remember guys, sa aton nga Dracunculus madinensis, cyclops man na siya. Diri sa dilatum may cyclops man. Okay? And these copepods are ano matabo, no? Inside the copepods, it will develop into procercoid, no? The coracidium will develop into procercoid. Okay? So, the infected crustaceans, no, will be ingested by small freshwater fish, no? And inside, no, the freshwater fish, the procercoid will develop into plerocercoid larva, or what we call as the sparganum. Okay? So, di na siya guys makadto sa fish, usually sa muscles ng fish or sa viscera sang fish naton. Okay? And then, the fish containing the plerocercoid larvae will be ingested by the definitive host. Example, we have your humans, cat, dogs, and other mammals, or even guys, other fish-eating mammals, such for example, this carnivorous fish, this will serve as the parathenic host. Okay, na-ingest siya, pero hindi na siya guys ma-develop into adults. Ma-develop pa na siya adults kung makaon sang humans and other definitive hosts ang carnivorous fish, no? So, da guys ma-mature. Okay? O kung ang humans, nagkaon siya sang fish nga nagkaon sang plerocercoid, this one. Okay? So, after which, once ingested by humans, The adult worm or the plerocercoid will attach to the intestinal wall sa small intestine, sang definitive host, and it will mature in about 3 weeks. Then the adult worm of dilatum will reside in the small intestine, particularly sa jejunum and ileum of humans. Okay? So infective stage, it's the plerocercoid, while the diagnostic stage, it's the cora or the rather the egg, no? Immature egg. Okay? So the pathogenesis of dilatum, guys, we have your diphyllobotriasis. So minor manifestation niya, abdominal discomfort, no, diarrhea, vomiting, weakness, and weight loss. No? And usually, guys, it may also cause intestinal obstruction. Okay, particularly kung heavy infection, no, your tapeworms will obstruct your intestine, do parehas man balagay sa ascaris nga bolus of ascaris. And also, guys, it may end up infecting your bile duct, no, causing cholangitis or cholecystitis or the inflammation of the gallbladder. Okay, that is due to its migrating proglutids. Since may ara kita ginatawag na pseudoapolysis, so pwede na siya, guys, no? But the main clinical manifestation, guys, ng dilatum is the vitamin B12 deficiency. Okay? The adult worm absorbs large quantities of the vitamin B12 in humans and interferes with ileal B12 absorption. So definitely, um, hindi ta there is a competition, no, competitive absorption for your vitamin B12. So imbes nga ma-absorb siya sa body ta, it will be taken away from us by this dilatum. So what will happen to us, no? This vitamin B12 deficiency, it may lead to the development of what we call your megaloblastic anemia. Okay? This megaloblastic anemia, this is an example of um, macrocytic normochromic nga anemia, wherein take note nga ang vitamin B12, guys, it is important for DNA synthesis. So para ang aton nga mga red blood cells ma-undergo sila mitosis for them to mature, kinanglan nila sang vitamin B12 for their normal DNA synthesis or for their cell division. So kung wala ka or deficient ka sa vitamin B12, what will happen? Hindi mag-cell divide or hindi capable nga mag-cell divide ang aton nga mga immature RBC, and it will end up having a large size nga mga RBC sa aton, not only sa aton nga bone marrow wherein gina-produce ang aton nga RBCs, but it will later on present man sa aton nga circulation. Okay? So, take note, no, gakos na siya anemia because hindi normal ang shape sa aton nga RBCs, which is biconcave. So, definitely, hindi man siya, guys, ka-deliver enough oxygen, no? May problema siya hemoglobin. Okay? That's why gakos siya anemia. So, take note, ha, dilatum vitamin B12 deficiency resulting to megaloblastic anemia. Okay, so let's proceed on how to diagnose dilatum. So we can perform a direct fecal smear to detect the presence of eggs, operculated eggs, and proglutids. And we can also perform Cato technique. And for the anemia, no, tendency is that we can check for an increased MCV or the mean corpuscular volume and MCH or the mean corpuscular hemoglobin. So, MCV, it usually associated ni siya, guys, sa mga large size or sa size mismo sang RBC. So, kung taas ang MCV, most likely taglagko, no, ang aton RBC or known as the macrocytes. And MCH naman, taas ang hemoglobin. Ay, hindi guys, diyan nga taas ang hemoglobin nga nag-cause siya anemia. Ang distribution ng hemoglobin sa RBC kay tungod hindi siya biconcave, naglako siya. So usually ma-maximize ang size, no, sang RBC. So definitely it may show or it may indicate an increase in MCH. And also, guys, usually your dilatum can also be mistakenly identified as pernicious anemia. But for us to rule out, no, kung bala pernicious siya o kung dilatum infection siya is that to check the gastric acidity, no, by the free HCl, no? So if may achlorhydria ang pasyente, ibig sabihin wala siya ga-produce or wala siya ga-secrete hydrochloric acid, definitely pernicious anemia na siya. Because pernicious anemia, it is an autoimmune disease wherein there is a certain antibodies that targets your parietal cells. While your dilatomia, hindi man na siya associated with any autoimmune disease, so definitely may ara siya guys presence of hydrochloric acid o kung normal ang aton nga gastric juices. Okay? So, for the treatment and prevention, so drug of choice, praziquantel, 5 to 10 milligrams per kilogram, single dose, okay? Proper cooking of fish for 10 minutes at 50 degrees Celsius for us to prevent the transmission of dilatum. And also, we can perform a deep freezing technique, usually negative 10 degrees Celsius for 24 hours for the people who eat raw fish. Okay? So, parenteral nga vitamin B12 should be given if B12 deficiency is manifested. Take note ha, kung mag-exhibit na siya guys vitamin B12, that's the time mo siya guys yung bulngon or i-administeral mo siya sang B12, no? Vitamin B12. So, criteria lang guys for an indication nga na-cure ka na sa dilatum is that the recovery of scolex guys in feces after treatment. So, it shows a successful treatment if ma-recover mo ang scolex. Okay? Okay, so now let's proceed to the next intestinal cestode, which is Yersinia saginata. Okay, so Yersinia saginata, it is otherwise known as your beef tapeworm. Okay, so Taenia saginata, guys, this is a cyclophilidean. That's why, as you can see sa iyang scolex, it has a 4 cup-like suckers or your acetabula. Okay? So, this acetabula, guys, these sucking structures or these suckers are known as, for cyclophilidean, these are Bothridia. For pseudophilidean, kagina sililatum niya, it's Bothria. Okay? So, length for Taenia saginata is 4 to 10 meters. Okay? And the number of segments still 1,000 from 1,000 to 4,000. Okay? So still for dilatum, consider pa siya as the longest because approximately lamat tong 4,000 guys, it may area maximum na ning 4,000 for Taenia saginata. Okay? So the scolex is cuboidal and take note, devoid of hooks or rostellum. Okay, so wala siya guys rostellum, only it's acetabula. Okay? So, okay. So, let's move on to the proglutids, no, of your Taenia saginata. For the Taenia saginata mature segment, it is nearly square. And take note, it has a bilobed ovary. So, try to look here. This is the ovary of the mature segment. So, bilobe siya, guys. And it has a scattered testis. Okay, so here, scattered ang testis niya surrounding the ovary. Okay, so median tube here sa center, amo ang uterus niya. Okay, so as well as for mature proglutid, it contains vaginal sphincter. So kabalo naman kita, here try to observe, may ari siya guys na naga-pointed and then pointed man di. So it controls the release of the eggs. Okay, so that's for the vaginal sphincter. How about for the gravid proglutids? It's gravid proglutids, guys. It's more longer, no? And it has uterus of 15 to 20 lateral branches. So these are the uterus, no? So naga-branch out siya, no? Or the filament type siya nga naga-branching, no? Amo nang gravid proglutids ang tinea saginata. Okay? So, gravid proglutids may undergo a polysis and are either passed out with the feces, or take note, they actively crawl out of the bowel to the external environment. So, it means ng gravid proglutids are motile. Okay? So, eggs are released, no, from the gravid proglutids and they remain viable in soil for weeks. Okay? Okay, so now let's move on to the eggs of your Taenia saginata. So, um, the eggs of Taenia saginata, guys, inside the egg, it has a oncosphere or embryo with 3 pairs of hooklets. And this embryo is known as the hexacant embryo. This hexacant embryo is covered by an inner embryophore, which are usually striated. Okay, striated, thick-walled, surrounding the embryo, and your inner embryophore is covered further by an outer eggshell or the capsule filled with filled with yolk material. No, this outer eggshell, guys, this is very thin, so um, usually guys, it might be lost, no? Sa tamaan niya kanipis, dasig na siya guys nga makakas, okay? So, eggs of Taenia saginata and Taenia solium are indistinguishable from each other, except that Taenia saginata eggs are acid fast, okay? And are infective to cattle, while your Taenia solium naman niya is infective to pigs, no? So, amo na lang kinalain. So, okay, so let's proceed with the life cycle. So first, guys, let's review again the larva associated with your Taenia saginata. It is a cysticercus, right? So it is the larval stage of Taenia. Pero guys, ga-differ na ang cysticercus, ang species sang cysticercus sang iyaka Taenia saginata from Taenia solium. Okay? So here, guys, um um, as you can see, ang morphology ng cysticercus, guys, it contains a muscular organ with bladder-like sac. Okay, so here may ara siya, guys, is covered with a sac filled with fluid. Okay, so let's start with the life cycle from eggs, no, or gravid proglutids nga present sa feces or passed out in the feces to the external environment. Okay, so here we have eggs and we have your gravid proglutids nga motile. Okay, so when the eggs present, no, sa soil, it will be or it might be ingested by cattle or cows, and then the oncosphere is released, no, and it penetrates the intestinal mucosa. Okay, and typically enters a muscle fiber and develops into Cysticercus bovis. Okay, that is what we call the Cysticercus of your Taenia saginata. It's Cysticercus bovis. Okay, so after nga na-release or nag-develop into Cysticercus bovis sa intermediate host, which is cattle, humans are infected by ingesting encysted larvae from raw or uncooked infected beef. Okay? So, the scolex, no, after ma-ingest, so ma-release siya, guys, ang larvae, okay, sa meat nga na-ingest ng humans, and then that scolex will attach to the intestine and will mature to adult in about 12 weeks. So usually, only one adult worm is present in Taenia saginata infections. Okay? So the adult seems to be irritated by alcohol, and passage of proglutids sometimes results after drinking. So take note ha, proglutids guys get irritated by alcohol, and it may result to passage of proglutids after alcohol um, uh, ingestion. Okay? So, here, sa small intestine, ma-develop na siya guys into adult, tinea, saginata, and then the cycle will repeat. Okay? So, this is an example of your cysticercus. It can be a bovis or it can be the cysticercus associated to your tinea solium. So, same lang man na sila guys. So, here, as you can see, we have the scolex present no inside the sac, and take note that this particular scolex is retractable. So ibig sabihin, pwede niya siya guys magwa diri. Okay? And that's the time nga ma-hook na siya. Ang hooklets bala, it will hook the intestinal mucosa and it will begin to mature. Okay? So, for tinea saginata nga pathogenesis, so since ang na-infect sa imo is cysticercus, no, it's the larvae. So, definitely, if you get infected by the cysticercus larvae, it may mature and it will develop, or it will cause what we call intestinal taniasis, no, or there is an adult worm infecting inside your intestine. So the most common chief complaint is passage of proglutids or segments in the stool, and also since actively motile ang proglutids, so there is already reported cases nga it causes obstruction in bile and pancreatic ducts. Okay, so that's why it may result to appendicitis or cholangitis due to its actively motile nga proglutids. And also guys, since motile siya, sometimes the patient may experience perianal discomfort, no? Or causing pruritus sa iya nga perianal because of its motile proglutids present, no? Sa iya nga um, perianal portion. Okay? So, that's for tinea saginata. It's intestinal taniasis. Okay? So, laboratory diagnosis to identify the characteristics of proglutids, eggs, and scolex. Okay? So, mature segments are stained, and then you check for the lateral branches. You count, no? You count the lateral branches from the uterus. So, gravid proglutids are pressed or flattened in between two glass slides and are examined against the light. Take note ha, stain siya, and then ibutang na siya guys in between the two slides and then i-press. Okay? So, you can still perform ELISA, no, for antigen detection in stool, PCR to differentiate T. saginata, and T. saginata asiatica. So these are the two subspecies of your Taenia saginata. So hindi mo man sila guys ma-differentiate using the mature segments, the stained slides. So you need to perform PCR for their um, molecular diagnostic. Okay? So, okay, so take note lang guys, kung ang tawon ta ang mature segment ya, it may show vaginal sphincter, no, for T. saginata. How about for T. solium? Sa T. solium ya, wala vaginal sphincter pero may accessory ovarian lobe na siya guys, ya ang T. solium. So usually in checking or in differentiating the two, T. solium and T. saginata, one thing to do is by examining their proglutids. Okay? So next, okay, drug of choice, praziquantel, and criteria for the cure, recovery of the scolix, and negative stool exam 3 months after treatment. So let's proceed with Taenia solium or the pork tapeworm. So um, man may serve as both, take note ha, definitive host and intermediate host. Unlike sa Taenia saginata, man or humans are only considered or serve as the definitive host. But hindi siya guys sa intermediate host or hindi siya pwede mangin intermediate host. For T. soliumia, pwede ang humans mangin intermediate host. That's why your T. solium this is associated both intestinal and tissue infection no in humans. So the adults here may establish or inhabit the upper small intestine, same man na siya. Shorter na siya galing niya guys compared to your T. saginata and has less number of proglutids. Okay? So, Taenia solium. Okay, so based sa picture kagina nga nalantaw nyo, no, previous na slide, the Taenia solium guys, ang difference niya guys for Taenia saginata, may ari ni siya guys siya double crown rostellum. So definitely may ara siya protruded nga structure sa iya scolex aside from its acetabula. Okay? And take note, hooks, may hooks siya guys. So, armed siya nga rostellum. Okay? So, the number of segments here is 800 to 1,000. So, it is much lesser compared to your Taenia saginata. And it is much shorter compared to your Taenia saginata. Okay? So, here, as you can see, it has 2 rows of hooks no present sa iyang rostellum. Okay? Okay, so now let's move on to the proglutids of your T. solium. For its mature proglutids, it resembles no T. saginata. However, the only difference is that or the differences are for T. saginata, there is a for T. solium, it has a presence of accessory ovarian lobe while absence of vaginal sphincter. And for its follicular testes, it has lesser number compared to your T. saginata. For its gravid proglutids naman, for your T. solium, it has only 7 to 15 lateral branches compared to your T. saginata which has 20. So less active pagid guys ang gravid proglutid sang T. solium compared to T. saginata. Okay, less active or less motile. Okay? So, but still, your T. solium, capable man siya sang apolysis, no? Or shedding of segments. So, comparing the two, their gravid proglutids, so as you can see here, for T. solium, it shows a finger-like appearance for its lateral branches and tree-like naman for T. saginata. So, most likely, damo ang lateral branches sang aton uterine lateral branches sang aton nga T. saginata compared to T. solium. Okay? So take note lang saginata, sinong mas laba sila sa species, sa name pa lang nila saginata solium. So definitely mas damo si saginata. Okay? So for their eggs, so as what I have said, indistinguishable ang T. saginata nga eggs and T. solium nga eggs. Okay? But amo lang ang kinalain lang kay acid fast ang aton nga T. saginata and sa ano lang siya no sa cattle siya guys maka-infect. Okay? While for T. solium definitely sa pigs. Okay? So same man na siya guys, may siya guys embryophore no that covers the hexacant embryo. Okay, so let's talk about the life cycle of your T. solium. We all know that kung natawon ta ang life cycle ya guys, there is different siya guys compared sa imo T. saginata. May ara lang gid siya guys slight difference, okay? So, the life cycle of T. solium your T-solium causes or it still causes intestinal tenacious, no? And its life cycle is exactly similar to that of T. saginata, except, okay, I take note ha, except that the intermediate host is pig. That's why tawag siya pork tapeworm. Tsaka next, men harboring the adult worm excrete the eggs in feces which can infect the same individual by auto-infection. So, pwede guys kang iya nga eggs, no, will undergo auto-infection. Okay? So, um, sa pagid, in pigs, the development or the development time in pigs, guys, is shorter. 7 to 9 weeks. Mas dasig niya, guys, ang transmission. Mas dasig niya siya, guys, yung mag-develop, kag mag-infect, Okay? Compared sa T. saginata. So, let's talk about the life cycle. Okay. So, eggs or gravid proglottids and feces are passed out in the environment. Okay? Kindly follow the cycle, ha? Let's start here. Okay? So when eggs or proglottids are ingested by pigs, the oncosphere hatches and the oncosphere will penetrate the intestinal mucosa of the pig and typically enters a muscle fiber and develop into Cysticercus cellulosae. Humans are infected by ingesting encysted larvae from raw or uncooked infected pork, or this is what we call your measly pork. Measly pork, M-E-A-S-L-Y. Okay, so the scolex will attach to the intestine and matures to adult in the small intestine. So man may be an intermediate host of your T-solium following auto-infection. Okay, so after yan ma-complete, mag-adult siya guys. So since capable siya nga mag-auto-infect, okay, so definitely man can become an intermediate host, no? So when Tania eggs are ingested by man as the intermediate host, the development of cysticerci or Cysticercus cellulosae is similar to pigs, no? Same lang. The oncosphere here hatches in the duodenum and spreads to different organs through the bloodstream, no? So it will be spread via portal circulation. Okay? So, and it might enter your lymphatics and reaches to various organs like subcutaneous tissue, muscle, do same lang man guys sa pigs guys, nga sa muscle fibers, ya ti area, since nagpass siya sa lymphatics natin, so it may reaches also other various organs, no? So, tissue, muscle, eye, and even sa brain, where it is transferred to larval stage Cysticercus cellulosae. Okay? So, autoinfection, guys, is possible via fecal-oral route due to poor hygiene, no? And that is for external auto-infection. Ibig sabihin external, outside natabo ang auto-infection, no? Fecal-oral route. Pwede man siya guys, internal auto-infection wherein it is due to reverse peristaltic movement, no? By which the gravid segments throw the eggs back into the stomach, equivalent to swallowing of the eggs. So, pares mo na nga duging tulon mong eggs. Ariya guys, ya due to peristaltic movement, reverse peristaltic movement. So, balik siya sa imong stomach and then may develop internal auto-infection. Okay? So, for the pathogenesis, teniasis, and cysticercosis at this time. Okay? So, let's discuss more on cysticercosis. Kasi same lang man na siya sa teniasis with T. saginata. So, it can be classified into 4. Subcutaneous, pwede siya mag-cause subcutaneous infection, muscular infection, ocular infection, or even neuro-infection. So, for the out of these 4 guys, ang cysticercosis is one of the most serious zoonotic diseases worldwide. Okay? So, here, your NCC or your neurocysticercosis, it may exist in 4 morphological stages. It will start as vesicular form. Gradually, it will develop into necrotic, no, tissue damage sa imong brain. Vesicular, it means mahimo siya guys cyst, no, ma-cyst, ma-insistation na siya sa imong nga brain, and then it may develop later on causing tissue damage or necrosis. And after necrotic stage, it will be followed by nodular, no, nodular, and finally into calcified. Nodular because of the response ng immune system. And then kung mapatay na siya ang Cysticercus celluloida, it will later on calcify. Okay? So your neurocysticercosis, siya ni guys ang gakos seizures sa pasyente, convulsions, visual and motor deficits, no, vomiting, retinal detachment, any nga connected sa aton nga central nervous system. Okay? So the diagnosis for cysticercosis in particular, we need to check the CSF for an increased opening pressure. So definitely, due to inflammation, there is increase in protein, decrease in glucose because glucose will be utilized by the parasite, and increase mononuclear cells as immune response. So definitely, no, may guys significant indication, no, by examining its CSF. And you can check its scan, no, brain scan through MRI and CT scan. Okay? So for the treatment, for teniasis, drugs of choice, we have the praziquantel, and for cysticercosis, we have for multiple parenchymal cystic lesion, no? So praziquantel, or you can have albendazole. Okay? So for ocular cysticercosis, it should be treated surgically before praziquantel or albendazole is given because ocular inflammation, guys, cannot be controlled with steroids. Okay? Siyempre, kung mag-undergo ka surgery, ginapa, ano na guys, ga-undergo niya siya guys, steroid administration para as an anti-inflammatory. Okay? So, or ginalimit ng steroids ang immune response. Okay? So, for Cyclophilidaean, Fortenia species, so the difference here based sa table. Okay, so infective stage, bovis for Saginata, Cellulose for Solium, no? And egg at the same time for the infective stages. Okay? So here the difference of the two, again, for their gravid proglotid. So let's move on to Taenia saginata or asiatica. Adult morphology, guys, was initially believed to be closely related to T. saginata. Okay, this is otherwise known as your Asian tapeworm or Taiwan Taenia because it was discovered there in Taiwan. Okay, so this causes Cysticercus viscerotropica. So usually makita din siya sa liver sang pigs, cattle, goats, wild boars, and monkey. Okay? So now let's proceed with Hymenolepis nana or your dwarf tapeworm. Okay, dwarf tapeworm, it is considered as the smallest tapeworm infecting humans, no? Hence gintawag siya dwarf tapeworm. Okay? So it is formerly known as Vampirolepsis nana. So for the adults, ang ES colex, guys, is subglobular or subspherical. Hindi siya muna ka-round, no? Medyo oval siya with 4 cup-shaped sucker and with rostellum containing 20 to 30 Y-shaped hooklets. Okay? Retractable ang iya rostellum, ha? For strobila, anterior are short, posterior are broad and long. Okay? It's mature proglottids, guys, It has 3 ovoid testes and 1 ovary. Take note ha, sa iya mature proglotid. And its gravid naman nga segment are separated from the strobila and will disintegrate as they pass out the intestine, releasing eggs in the stool. Okay? So, for the eggs, guys, it is round to slightly oval and take note, colorless. Ibig sabihin, it is a non-bile stained. No? Hindi ni siya guys yang nga kung ma-defecate mo ni siya ang eggs, hindi wala siya guys, hindi siya ma-stain sang bile nato, unlike with other eggs, okay? So colorless ni siya guys in saline mount, no? Kung saline bala NSS ang gamiton ta, wala siya color. So it is the only cestode egg that is not stained by bile when passed through the intestine. So still may oncosphere siya, and it has a thin outer membrane and thick inner membrane. Okay, with conspicuous bipolar thickenings. Okay, so here guys, oh, this is um the thin outer membrane here, thin outer membrane, and we have here the thick inner membrane. Okay, thick inner membrane. Okay, and it has a bipolar filaments with 4 to 8 hair-like projections here. Okay, so the space between the two membranes here, oh, ang space sa tunga, this is filled with yolk granules. That's why kung natawag mo siya, granular ang iyang appearance. So for the life cycle, here the larval form is what we call the cysticercoid. Okay? So its life cycle, guys, it has a dual pathway, direct and indirect. For the direct cycle, the host ingests eggs which hatch in the duodenum. Okay? So the liberated embryos will penetrate the mucosal villi. So here, direct ni siya guys. Ibig sabihin, ma-ingest mo siya directly ang egg. Okay? So, once ma-ingest mo siya, ma-liberate ang embryo and may develop into infective cysticercoid larvae. Okay? So, once aron siya sulod sa imong intestine, it will develop into adult. Okay? So, auto-infection can occur through fecal oral route or within the small bowel. Okay, so here, auto-infection, pwede gina siya. So, indirect cycle naman niya, accidental ingestion of infected arthropod as the intermediate host, like the rice and flour beetles, your Tenebrio species, and sometimes through fomites, water, or food contaminated with larva. Okay, so pwede na siya guys, indirectly, ma-acquire mo siya by ingesting accidentally this intermediate host. Okay? So, other intermediate hosts, guys, pwede rat fleas, no, such as your Pulex irritans and Xenopsylla cheopis. Okay? So, again, we have the direct and indirect. So for the pathogenesis, so headache, dizziness, anorexia, pruritus of the nose and anus, diarrhea, and vomiting. For heavy infection, enteritis due to necrosis and desquamation of the intestinal epithelium. So, kung heavy infection, ga-produce niya siya guys, di na siya guys ga-start siya mangin symptomatic, no, because of the patient's immunological response to the parasite. Okay? So, for the diagnosis, so demonstration of the characteristic eggs in feces, so you check for the morphology, concentration technique, and eosinophilia, particularly 5% eosinophilia, taas na siya guys. Okay, so treatment, drug of choice, Praziquantel. Okay? So, to prevent personal hygiene, control of rodents, because they can be a source of infection as well, proper storage of food and protecting it from infestation with grain bees, no, or mga beetles. Okay? So now let's proceed with another species of Hymenoplepis, which is your diminuta or your rat tapeworm. So this species or this cestode is a cosmopolitan parasite primarily of rats. So iya gina-infect guys, rats ang definitive host. So it differs from your H. nana because it requires an intermediate host as insects like um, Lepidopterans, myriapods kag beetles. Okay? So it undergoes as indirect life cycle only, no? There is no direct life cycle for your H. diminuta. So for the adult, anong na-observe naton sa iyang morphology? It has a rudimentary unarmed rostellum. Ibig sabihin, it has only a basic or a simple type of rostellum. Try to look simple, nula siya guys mayuga protrude, and unarmed, no hooklets. Okay? So, similar ang sexual organs to each nana, no, with 3 ovoid testes and 1 ovary, and unilateral genital pores. Each proglutids contain a sac-like uterus filled with eggs. Okay? So, let's discuss the eggs, no? For the eggs here, it has no or absence of bipolar filaments compared it to H. nana nga may ara. Diriya wala guys. Okay? Here, no. Okay? Though may ara siya bipolar thickenings. As you can see, may nagaprotrude nga portion sa iyang embryo, no? So, sa iya gali inner membrane, may ara bipolar thickenings pero wala bipolar filaments or hair projections. Okay? And try to observe, guys, the arrangement of its hooklets, guys. It forms like a fan. Okay? Okay? Naga-form siya fan. Bile stain siya, guys, ang eggs compared to your H. nana nga hindi. So, for the life cycle, here, diri kinanglan niya guys sa intermediate host. Atuya kagina sa H. nana ya, biskan wala intermediate host, maka-complete siya sang iya life cycle. Amo na siyang difference pagid sang ila life cycle. So, diri kinanglan niya gid intermediate host. Wherein, embryonated egg in feces, no, will be ingested by intermediate hosts such as fleas, and it will hatch there, releasing the oncosphere, and it will penetrate the intestinal wall. And the flea will be accidentally ingested by by the way, in fleas gali, it will develop into cysticercoid, and humans might get infected by ingesting fleas, accidentally, no, ingesting the fleas infected with cysticercoid. Okay? So here, ang difference lang guys sa aton to yung nga ang difference lang guys ang cysticercoid nga larvae, take note ha. Ang cysticercus to yung gani Fortenia, ya guys, may ara to siya guys yung fluid filled bladder. Aria wala. Okay? Wala siya guys. Fluid filled sac. Okay? So usually, rat ang definitive host. Okay? So accidental host ang humans. Okay? So that's why yung tawag siya rat tapeworm. No? Common siya in infecting domestic rats. So the difference of the two, no? So the scolex, no, ang kinalain din ng scolex, and then ang definitive host for H. nana, humans, for H. diminuta, rats. Infective stage, yeah, syempre, eggs and cysticercoid for H. nana because may direct and indirect siyang life cycle. For H. diminuta, yes, cysticercoid lang. No direct life cycle. And ga-require sa H. nana, gidya guys, ang intermediate host. Ang diminuta, intermediate host. Ang H. nana ya may or may not require intermediate host. And at the same time, in ilang eggs, may kinalain gidya guys. H. diminuta, take note to, it may resemble a sunny side up egg because of the absence of its polar or bipolar filaments. Okay? So, another picture showing you the difference of the two. So, for H. diminuta, diagnosis, identification of eggs in stool. Okay, and then um, the treatment here is praziquantel, 25 milligrams per kilogram single dose. Okay. So now let's proceed with Dipylidium caninum. So this is a dog tapeworm or double-pored tapeworm. Okay, this is a common tapeworm of dogs and cats. Again ha, common tapeworm of dogs and cats. So definitely, its definitive host are dogs and cats. Usual gina siya guys ang definitive host, and kita nga humans, accidental. Okay? So, gintawag siya double-pored tapeworm because ang iya genital pores duwa. Okay? So, common name niya guys is cucumber tapeworm. And take note, ang iyang scolex naga-contain 4 oval suckers and is armed with rostellum and 1 to 7 rows of hooklets. Okay? Ariyo sa picture. So, again, for the scolex, 1 to 7 rows of rose thorn-shaped hooklets. Rose thorn, kita mo nang sa rose guys, sa iyang stem, no? Amo na siya guys, it resembles the hooklets of your Dipylidium caninum. So, for the gravid proglottids, pumpkin seed, no? Ang shape ya, it's like a pumpkin seed which are filled with capsules or pockets of about 8 to 15 eggs encloses in an embryonic membrane. Okay? So, kung wet nga nakuha mo ang proglottidia guys, it resembles a pumpkin seed, melon seed, cucumber seed. Kung na-dry, nagmala na siya guys, rice grain. Okay? So, so I have here a picture showing you the egg packet nga ginanamin ko gina. No? So, ang eggs guys, na-contain sa isa pag ka-egg packet. Okay? So, ang eggs niya guys here, single egg, it has a thin shell and hexacant man guys nga embryo, or may siya guys embryo containing hooklets. Okay? So the intermediate hosts are the larval stages of the following. Okay? Cat flea, dog flea, and human flea. Okay? So please take note ha, mga usual nga intermediate host. So here, as you can see, its life cycle, it resembles with the indirect cycle of your H. nana. No? Indirect siya guys, kitungod may araman siya guys, fleas here. Okay, so the host, there are two types of hosts here. The definitive host, the dogs and cats, and rarely humans, and the intermediate hosts are insects or the fleas. So the gravid proglottids are passed out intact in the feces or emerge from the perianal. Egg packets of containing embryonic eggs are ingested by the larval stages of flea. Okay, so here. So the oncosphere will hatch from the eggs and will penetrate the intestinal wall of the flea or the larvae, or the larval flea. Okay, and then the adult flea, no, will harbor the infective cysticercoid, no, because as the flea will mature, developing into adults, so ganaga mature man guys ang oncosphere forming cysticercoid, and it will be accidentally ingested by mammalian host. Okay, So, humans, normally children, acquire the infection by ingesting the infected flea. Okay? So, it may develop into adult in small intestine, then repeating its life cycle. So, its pathogenesis, mostly asymptomatic but rarely nagakos siya guys indigestion, pruritus ani, abdominal pain. And take note that children are affected commonly based on its life cycle. So, how to treat Dipylidium caninum infection? So, definitely praziquantel as the drug of choice. Okay? So, you can also look for the egg capsules, rarely recovered from the stool, but the proglutids, guys, are mainly examined, good, no? So now let's move on to Rhyletena garrisoni, or known as the Madagascar worm. This was a common tapeworm of rats. Again, common tapeworm infecting rats. Okay? So, for its adult, minute ang iyang ang morphology sang adult worm. Yes, scolex, guys, is very small and the subglobular man or oval shape with 4 acetabula. So, may siya rostellum and armed rostellum siya, guys, with 2 alternating rows of 90 to 140 hammer-shaped shoots. Nakita nyo na sa punta sa hammer, di ba? May siya flat, may man siya pointed nga part. So, ang pointed nga parts ng hammer do amo nang iya nga appearance. Mature proglutids siya, guys, bilobed ovary surrounded by 36 to 50 ovoid testes. And gravid proglutids, definitely, it is filled with 200 to 400 egg capsules with 1 to 40 spindle-shaped eggs. Okay? So, here, ang eggs niya, guys, oncosphere man na siya with enclosed siya with 2 thin membranes, the outer elongated membrane and the inner spherical membrane. So, outer elongated membrane, amo ni siya naga-form sang spindle, and then with the round nga spherical membrane. Okay, so here, try to look. Amo ni siya, guys, ang egg siya, guys. So, sulod sang capsule. Okay, or egg capsule. Okay, so the gravid segments may be ingested by insect or intermediate host. Okay, so usually mga flower beetle, no? So the development from egg to cysticercoid larval stage takes about 2 weeks. So ma-develop ni siya, guys, diri sa aton nga insects, no, into cysticercoid, and these insects will be ingested by its definitive host nga rat, and accidentally it will be ingested by humans. Okay? So diagnosis, detection of the characteristic ova or proglutids in stool, and treatment praziquantel. For garrisoni, prevention control, syempre elimination of rodents, proper storage of grain products, no? And sanitary waste disposal. So now let's move on to extraintestinal cestodes rather. So to start with, we have your Echinococcus species. So we have, guys, different species of Echinococcus which are also considered as clinically significant. We have your E. granulosus, causing cystic echinocosis, Multilocularis, causing alveolar echinocosis, and E. vogeli and E. oligarthrus for polycystic echinococosis. Okay, so your multilocularis, E. vogeli, and E. oligarthrus are less common because their life cycle, guys, are considered sylvatic or nag-occur usually sa mga wild animals. Okay, so ang very significant na, guys, among these 4 species is your E. granulosus, okay, infecting humans. So take note that this echinococcus, guys, granulosus, it has only 3. Okay, it has only 3 nga proglutids. Kulang taon ta, guys, shorter siya, no? Shorter siya nga tapeworm nga naga-contradict sa aton nga H nana. But take note nga ang H nana nato niya guys, ang definitive host niya is humans. Ariya guys ya dog tapeworm ni siya. Okay, this is a dog tapeworm and um this is known as the dog tapeworm. So usually ang definitive host niya guys ya is dog. Okay? So ang Dipilidium caninum ya, common lang to ya guys, a common tapeworm infecting dogs and cats. So hindi ma-confuse ha. So it is formerly known as Urtania granulosus. So Scolexia pyriform, armed with 2 rows of hooklets with 4 acetabula. Strobila made up of only 3. Take note, 1 immature, 1 mature, and 1 gravid. Okay? And its gravid proglotis usually the widest and the longest among the 3. So kita nga humans, we are just an accidental take note ha, accidental intermediate host, not definitive host. So later on, mabalanta na. So, Echinococcus granulosus eggs is radially striated with the hexacant embryo. Okay, it resembles Tania eggs. Okay, so guys, take note by the way, your Echinococcus granulosus is considered as the smallest among all the cestodes, but infecting humans, it's the H. nana. Okay? So Echinococcus granulosus, ang iya guys nga larval here is hydatid cyst. Okay? It's the larval stage of Echinococcus granulosus which arises from the egg after you ingested the egg, no? Containing the its larval stage. It's the egg mismo, no? Ang iyang hexacant nga embryo. Okay, so cyst wall consists of 3 layers. Take note ha, the pericyst or the outer or the host-derived. Sabihin, covered ni siya guys, halin man ni siya guys sa aton. After yung guys na infect, syempre, it will be part or it will infect and it will form a, it will adapt the environment. So most likely it will be covered by host-derived nga tissues. No, usually guys, fibrous tissue ni siya with blood vessels. And then for the ectocyst, the middle layer, it is parasite-derived. So it is a tough, elastic, glycan-rich, acellular hyaline layer of variable thickness. Okay? So it resembles the white of a hard-boiled egg. Doon mo nang iya guys nga characteristic. So, ang endocyst naman niya, it's the germinal layer, is still a parasite-derived. So, it consists of number of nuclei embedded in the protoplasmic mass, and its function is to form the ectocyst outside, and on the inner side, it forms the brood capsule and secretes the hydatid fluid. So, here, siya ni guys ang nag-form sang aton nga brood capsule. Take note ha, brood capsule ang naga-enclose sa aton nga mga daughter cyst, no? Sa sulod sang parent cyst, okay? So, the hydatid fluid, this is a very clear, colorless to pale yellow. Si amo ni siyang fluid here. So, usually the brood capsules may rupture and release protoscolyces, no, nga present sa sulod. And these protoscolyces and brood capsules the protoscolyces will be deposited at the bottom of the cyst, no? And this is referred as the hydatid sand. So mga granules na sila guys nga nag-rupture ba lang ang mga daughter cyst, so it will liberate your protoscolyces. Syempre, ma-settle down din siya sa dalom. This is the hydatid sand. Okay? So, here, this is an example of the protoscolyces. So, amo ni siya guys ang infective, yagid guys yan yung nga amo ning naga-cause attachment. Okay? So here sa iyang life cycle, as you can see, the usual definitive host is dogs. While humans are accidental intermediate hosts. Okay, let's see. So like for example, if a dog, a definitive host, is infected with adult Echinococcus granulosus, so syempre Malaysia eggs, no? It will be present in the feces, no, as embryonated egg containing the hexacant embryo. And then this hexacant embryo present sa soil, it will be ingested by sheep, goats, and or swine as intermediate host. And ma-develop na guys sa sulod sang intermediate host cyst, no? So this particular oncosphere, ang iya hooklets, ma-attach na siya guys sa iya nga um, um, upon ingestion, it will form an hydatid cyst in liver, lungs, okay? So, ma-penetrate na siya una sa intestinal wall, okay? So, then ma-form na siya cyst, okay? Then, after that, dogs will be infected by ingesting cyst or um, meat, no? Ang meat balas ang ships ni guys kung magkaon sila, mga organs sang infected nga intermediate host. Releasing the protoscolex from the cyst and the scolex attached to the intestine of the dogs and then will mature. So, kung kita nga humans, ma-ingest ang eggs, what will happen sa aton? So, definitely, kung ma-ingest ang cyst, so mangin intermediate ay ang egg, mangin intermediate host kita. So ma-acquire ang infection by ingestion of food contaminated with dog species. So possible ginabala guys. So eggs will transform to larva, hydatid cyst in the duodenum, and the oncosphere is released by the rupture of embryophore and it will penetrate the intestinal wall. Okay, so then it will enter the portal circulation and carries to the liver, forming hydatid cyst and spread to other various organs. So kita dead end na guys nga host, nga intermediate host. Okay? So that's for the life cycle of your Echinococcus granulosus. And take note guys nga pwede na guys nga ang flies bala mangin vector, mechanical vectors ang eggs naton. Okay? So amo lang na siya guys. So the usual intermediate host is sheep, the accidental intermediate host is man, and we are considered as dead end host, and definitive host, dogs and other canines. So here, the pathogenesis, most important site of involvement, we have the liver. Okay, so lungs, brain, or orbit may be involved, less common sa spleen, kidneys, heart, bone, and central nervous system. So inflammatory actions of the surrounding tissues as the cyst develops, and organ impairment, tissue atrophy, and necrosis due to enlarging cyst. Definitely due to the pressure, it might affect the formation or cell division sang aton nga cells. So it might cause organ impairment and atrophy. Okay? So the pathogenesis also guys, ang nag-contribute gini guys is due to rupture of hepatic cyst. So releasing the scoliosis, it might cause intermittent jaundice, no, by damaging the liver, fever and eosinophilia due to the released scoliosis or protoscoliosis. Definitely there will be immune response. Peribronchial cyst naman, sudden coughing and allergic symptoms. And for the kidneys, usually hematuria, kidney dysfunction, hydatid material in urine. Due to rupture, definitely there will be hydatid sand or mga granules sa imo nga urine present. Okay? So, to diagnose granulosus, so definitely cyst puncture is not recommended because it might release your protoscoliosis, and X-ray is also performed to detect the presence of cysts, and immunologic tests. So remember the bentonite flocculation, which is also performed for T. spiralis. So, gina-performan siya for E. granulosus. For the intradermal test, Casonis test. Okay? So, hydatid fluid microscopy is done in direct mount after you, after you surgically remove the cyst. So, to check or to confirm if man gid siya, no, if hydatid cyst man gid siya. So it is done in direct wet mount or stain with acid fast stain. So drop kada guys of centrifuge fluid, i-centrifuge mo ang hydatid fluid, place, and then you get a drop of the sediments, and then you place it in 2 slides, and then you check for the presence of the protoscolysis. So usually ang fluid na guys, ano man na siya guys, kung naga-grate bala kagaras ang iyang ang feeling nga kagaras, so usually that is due to the hydatid sand. Okay? So if may ara guys mga past discharge due to bacterial infection or secondary bacterial infection nga ma-arise, no? So pwede mo guys nga i-examine ang purulent material after treating it with hydrochloric acid. Okay? So, to treat, guys, so surgical resection, no? So, during surgery, guys, so preoperative use of albendazole is effective in reducing size and to prevent the recurrence. So, paimnon ta siya ni albendazole prior for surgical operation. Okay? So, for percutaneous aspiration, ari guys, so gina-perform man ni siya guys, technique for single or multiple cyst. It is what we call your pair technique. Percutaneous aspiration, followed by injection, and re-aspiration. So, first, ultrasound, no? Ultrasound guided percutaneous puncture. Pasudlan mo siya sang guys, sang invasive ni siya nga procedure. So, with the guide of ultrasound, and then you aspirate for the substantial amounts of cystic fluids, and you can use it now for your diagnostic. And then you inject protoscolicidal agents such as 95% ethanol, cetrimide, or hypertonic saline. And then you re-aspirate the fluid after 5 minutes. Okay? So the generally the drug of choice is albendazole. Okay, so now let's move on to the last cestode under extraintestinal. And this is also considered as pseudophilidean together with Diphyllobotrium. Okay? So, spirometra, guys, this is not normal, no, human parasites. Okay? So, this can accidentally infect man and cause what we call your sparganosis. Why sparganosis? Because it is caused by the sclerocercoid larva, which is known as the sparganum. Amo nang tawag tadi guys sa sclerocercoid larvae. Again ha, similar ni siya guys sa aton nga Diphyllobotrium. May ara Coracidium, procercoid, plerocercoid. Ang plerocercoid is otherwise known as sparganum for spirometra. Okay? So adults of these worms are intestinal parasite of cats, dogs, and other carnivores. Okay? So these adults are usually mistaken for adult of dilatum. Okay? So here, ang iyang proglutids, no? Ang gravid proglutids niya, guys, it shows spiral uterus. No, spiral uterus ang iyang gravid proglutids, while for your dilatum niya, rosette uterus. Okay, so iya spiral. So eggs are operculated as well and immature when laid, and its larvae is opaque and glistening white. Okay, or its sparganum. So this is the life cycle of your spirometra. So its life cycle is similar to dilatum. Okay, so only hosts are different. Okay, so unembryonated eggs are passed in feces, no, here, And then, Coracidium will hatch from eggs and are ingested by crustaceans, cyclops, and then it will develop into procercoid. The procercoid will be ingested by man accidentally, and then, but usually it is, it infects, no? Um, um, Another intermediate host, a second intermediate host, which are fishes, no, reptiles, amphibians, no, and then it will develop into plerocercoid, and then the plerocercoid present sa aton nga secondary intermediate host will be ingested by um, um, the definitive host. Okay? So that's the life cycle of your spirometra. Okay? So pathogenesis, parganosis, painful edema due to migrating larvae, or otherwise known as the migrating tumor, and then periodic giant urticarial and the edema. Okay? So here, this is an example, or this is a picture showing you the plerocercoid larvae. Um, so, ario present sa tissue sa humans, no? Accidentally. So, that's for your spirometra. So, drugs are not effective. However, praziquantel is recommended. So, another picture. Your Sparganum larva migrating along the parietal pleura found by thoracoscopy. Thoracoscopy rather. So that ends our discussion for your cestodes.